Hello students, my name is Mr. Harshal Nezkar and we are studying the subject of basic human rights and this is lecture number 19. In the last two lectures we have studied the concept of communalism that is present in our Indian society, the past history of that particular communalism in India. Then we studied the past incidents of communal conflicts. Then we studied the steps required to control this particular communal clashes in India. All right. So in this lecture and in the next lecture also, we will continue the concept or the social problems that are present in our Indian society, and amongst which there is one big problem right now, that is the rights of women, and there is a need of empowerment of women in Indian society. So basically the women empowerment refers to the increasing spiritual, political, social, educational, gender or economic strength of individuals and the communities of women only. The women's empowerment in India, it is heavily dependent on many different variables that include geographical locations, that means it can be urban or rural area. Then it is dependent on educational status of the of those women communities, and it is also dependent on the social status of the women communities, like the caste wise or the class wise. All right, so that is the need of women empowerment today in these days. And for this particularly, the Indian government or the Indian constitution has made some or gave some fundamental rights to the women. All right, and we will study those particular rights. The Department of Women and Child Development, which was created in the year of 1985, and it implemented the policies and programs related to the women and child welfare issues. So basically, the compared to other religions, the women from Hindu community, they suffered from many legal disabilities. What kind of disabilities we'll study in the later part. After the new constitution of India, which was prepared in year of 1950, the women's position was changed on the basis of the equal of rights to given to the women along with the men. Then they have given the right to vote, and also they have given right to get elected also. The Panchayati Raj bodies seats, they were also reserved for the women also, and there is also a 30% reservation seats for women at every location in our country. All right, so that is the social legislation that has been included in our Indian constitution. Now we will see the social legislation acts that particularly constitutes the articles that protect the rights of women. So first of all, let's see the first act, that is regarding the Domestic Violence Act, and it was developed in year of 2005. So basically it includes actual or threatened abuse against women in their homes, including those of a physical, sexual, verbal, emotional or economic nature. And through this act, women are entitled to the first of all protection. The district magistrate, he can pass orders to stop the offender from committing violence, communicating with the women or intimidating her family. Then women are entitled to the residence. They can't be evicted from a shared house of a family. Then women are entitled to the compensation. They can claim the damages for mental and physical injuries that has been imported by the family. Then they are also entitled to the monetary relief and maintenance including the loss of earnings, medical expenses, and damage to the property, are also entitled to the women community. The punishment for domestic violence is the jail sentence of up to 1 year or the 20,000 rupees fine. So that was the Domestic Violence Act of 2005. Then we will see the Hindu Succession Act, which was taken place in year of 1956. It is an act of Parliament of India that was enacted to amend and codify the laws relating to the unwilled succession of property. So under this act, any property possessed by a Hindu female, it is it is to be held by her absolute property, and she is given full power to deal with that particular property, and she has the right to dispose it off by her will as she likes. Earlier, this act didn't give the daughters equal rights to the ancestral property, but this disparity was removed by an amendment that came into force on 9th of September 2005. That means the married daughters have the equal rights to the property or the ancestral property. So that was the Hindu Succession Act, and under which the daughters have also the equal right on the property. Then we will see the Equal Remuneration Act that has taken place in the year of 1976. So basically it is an act to provide for the payment of equal remuneration to men and women workers, and for the prevention of discrimination on the grounds of sex against the women in the matter of employment and for matters connected there with or incidental thereto. All right, so it extends to the whole of India, and the duty of employer to pay equal remuneration to men and women workers for the same work or the similar nature of work, and there should not be any discrimination to be made while recruiting men and women workers for the same post. So that is the Equal Remuneration Act. Now we will see the Dowry Prohibition Act that has taken place in year of 1961. So basically dowry means any property or the valuable security that has been given or agreed to be given either directly or indirectly by one party to a marriage to the other party to a marriage, and it extends to the whole India except the state of Jammu and Kashmir. If any person after the commencement of this act gives or takes or abates the giving or taking of dowry, he shall be punishable with imprisonment for the term which shall not be less than 5 years, and it is also been punishable with a fine which shall not be less than 15,000 rupees or the amount of the value of such dowry, amongst whichever is more, that has been included as a fine. All right, so that was the Dowry Prohibition Act. All right, so let's move on to the next act, that is the Eve Teasing Act, and that has basically taken place in the year of 2011 after the increasing reports of the particular Eve teasing crimes. So basically, the Eve teasing is a ridiculous form of enjoyment for men, and it is a physical as well as mental torment for women. This is one of the daily problems women in Indian society face. Of all the forms of violence against women, they can assume Eve teasing is the most often happening crime against them, and it is insidious because it is considered normal behavior and not an assault to the females. All right, so that is the biggest problem that has been present in our Indian society and the Indian mentality. So basically there are three sections that has been included in our Indian constitution. So first is the section number 294 according to the Indian Penal Code, and according to that particular section, whoever does any obscene act in any public place or sings, recites or utters any obscene song, the ballad or the words in or near any public scale, he shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 3 months, or with a fine, or with both imprisonment and fine. So that is the section number 294, uh, which prohibits the eve teasing at a public place. Then there is the section number 354 according to the Indian Penal Code. So according to which, the whoever assaults or uses criminal force to any woman, intending to outrage or knowing it to be likely that he will thereby outrage her modesty, he shall be punished with imprisonment of up to 2 years, or with fine, or with both imprisonment and fine. So basically that is the use of criminal force against women. It is being prohibited under the section of 354. Then there is the section number 504 in the Indian Penal Code, according to which whoever intentionally insults and thereby gives the provocation to any person, intending or knowing it to be likely that such provocation will cause him to break the public peace or to commit any other offense, shall be punishable with the imprisonment of 2 years or fine, or both the imprisonment and fine. So basically the provocation to any insults or the criminal force by the third person, it is also been prohibited by the Indian constitution under the section number 504, and it is also punishable with the imprisonment and both and fine, or both. All right, so that was the eve teasing act that has been taken place in year 2011. So let's move to the next, that is the maternity benefits, and that act particularly taken place in the year of 1961, according to which an act to regulate the employment of women in certain establishments for certain periods before and after the childbirth, and to provide for maternity benefits and the certain other benefits other than the maternity. So basically there are some maternity issues of women that cannot be understood by the main community, so there should be some benefits given to the women for the maternity benefits. So according to this act particularly, the every woman will be entitled to a maternity leave of 12 weeks, at least 12 weeks. Then they should be given to the option of work from home. This act permits a woman to work from home depending on the nature of work. Then also a woman should be given a benefit of crèche facilities. So basically crèche means the a nursery where babies and young children are cared for during the working day of his or her mother. So basically women will be allowed the 4 visits to this particular nursery in a day by the employer. So that is the maternity beneficial acts. All right, so let's move on to the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act that was taken place in the first it was taken place in 1956, then it was improved by the amendment bill in year of 2006. So the basically the Immoral Traffic Amendment Bill in 2006, it amends the Immoral Traffic Act that was taken place in 1956, and it is made to combat the trafficking and sexual exploitation for commercial purposes. The bill basically deletes the prohibitions that penalized prostitutes for soliciting the clients. It penalizes any person visiting a brothel for the purpose of sexual exploitation of trafficked victims. So basically, under this act, the prostitutes are not entitled to any uh, uh, penalty, but the person visiting that particular brothel, he is uh, entitled to the penalty for the sexual exploitation, as the prostitutes are trafficked victims. Then all offences listed in the bill would be tried in camera. That is, the public hearing would not be included from the attending the trial. Then the term trafficking in person has been defined with a provision for punishing any person who is guilty of the offense of trafficking in persons for the purpose of prostitution. So this means that particular prostitution has no particular gender specific, so he can be men or women. All right. So the key issues and analysis of this particular Traffic Prevention Act: while a prostitution is not an offense, it is not considered as an offense in our country, and practicing, but the practicing the prostitution in a brothel or within the 200 meters of any public place, it is considered as a illegal only. So there seems to be a lack of clarity on this particular act, on whether the prostitution ought to be legitimate way of uh, earning or not. So this particular Traffic Prevention Act or the Indian Constitution, it does not give any particular clarity on the issue of prostitution is legal or illegal. Also, the Traffic Prevention Act punishes the trafficking for the purpose of prostitution. Trafficking for other purposes such as the bonded labor and domestic work are not covered by the bill. The bonded labor and domestic work acts, they have been covered by another sections in our Indian Constitution. The rank of special police officer who would enforce this act is lowered from inspector to sub inspectors, and such powers delegated to junior officers could lead to a greater harassment. All right, so that was the immoral traffic prevention act that was taken or the amended in the year of 2006. Let's move on to the next social legislation act, that is the Child Marriage Restraint Amendment Act, that has taken place in the year of 1978. It is also called as the Sarda Act. It is a law to restrict the practice of child marriage, and its goal was to eliminate the dangers that has been placed on young girls who could not handle the stress of married life and avoid the early deaths in early years. So basically, this act defined the age of male child that should be 21 years or the younger. So basically, this act defines the age of male child, that is the below 21 years. All right. Then a female child is considered when only she is 18 years or the younger. Then a minor as a child of either sex, male or female, is considered when he or she is 18 years or the younger. So that is the Child Marriage Restraint Act that has been taken place in, actually it was in year of 1929, but it was amended in the year of 1978. All right, so let's move on to the next legislation act, that is the Hindu Guardianship Act, that has taken place in 1956. So this act was enacted in India along with the legislations like Hindu Marriage Act in 1955, the Hindu Succession Act 1956, the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act, that is, we are studying the act in 1956 under the leader of the late Pradhan Jawaharlal Nehru. So basically, the Hindu Guardianship Act, it provides that the natural guardian of a Hindu minor boy or unmarried girl is the father of that particular boy or girl. And if that particular boy or girl has no father, then that particular guardianship will goes to the mother. And suppose if that boy or girl has no parents alive, then that will be the then the natural guardianship will goes to the paternal grandfather. And suppose if he or she doesn't have any paternal grandparents also not uh, alive, then any male relation or the uh, male relative that is present or that is uh, alive at that particular point, he has been given the natural guardianship according to the act in 1956. It also provides the guardian of married minor girl is the husband of that particular minor girl. All right, so that is the Hindu Guardianship Act. All right, so let's move on to the Hindu Marriage Act that taken place in 1955, and it is the Hindu Marriage Act. It provides guidance for Hindus to be in a systematic marriage bond. It gives meaning to a marriage, cohabitation rights for both the bride and the groom, and a safety for their family and children so that they do not suffer from their parental issues. This act applies to all forms of Hinduism. For example, to a person who is a Veerashaiva, Lingayat, or Jain, or etc. Alright. And according to this Hindu Marriage Act, there are conditions for marriage. The Section 5 of the Hindu Marriage Act, it specifies that the conditions must be made for marriage to be able to take place. Then there is also condition of void marriages. That means the either party, that is the bride or the groom, he should be of the uh, that particular age, or the he should not be a minor as the marriage takes place. That means the bridegroom should be of 21 years of age and the bride should be of 18 years of age. Then there is also the voidable marriage. The both parties must be sound of mind and the capable of understanding the implications of marriage. Then there is a condition of registration. The Section 8 of Hindu Marriage Act, it allows a state government to make rules for registration of Hindu marriages, particularly to that state, and particularly with respect to the recording the particulars of marriage as may be prescribed in the Hindu marriage register. Then there are some particular rules for divorce and remarriages according to the Hindu Marriage Act. Alright, so for divorce, although marriage is held to be divine in Hindu marriage, in Hindu religions, the Hindu Marriage Act, it does permit either party to divorce on the ground of unhappiness, or if he or she can prove that the marriage is no longer tenable. All right. So then there is a law of remarriage also. So really, remarriage is possible once a marriage has been dissolved by a decree of divorce and no longer able to be appealed, whether there was no right of appeal in the first place, or whether the time for appealing has expired, or whether an appeal has been presented but dismissed. All right, so that is the uh, right of remarriage. Let's move on to the Hindu Widow Remarriage Act. So basically, this act was legalized on 16th of July and in the year of 1856, and it was enacted on 25th of July of the same year. This cause was championed by Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, who was an important figure of the Bengal Renaissance. Vidyasagar, he went ahead and provided the legal safeguards ensuring that widows do not lose out on any inheritance that they were entitled to by their deceased husbands. The Hindu widows for many years were subject to extreme hardships, including the practice of sati, a social funeral practice which required a widow to immolate herself on the funeral pyre of her husband. Sati was finally banned in year of 1826 due to a joint effort by social and religious reformer Raja Ram Mohan Roy and the British, who condemned this inhuman practice. So then there is the Hindu Widow Marriage Act. If the widow remarrying is minor whose marriage has not been consummated, she shall not remarry without the consent of her father. And if she has no father, then it is given to the paternal grandfather. Likewise, as the guardianship acts. That means, suppose a widow, if she is a minor and if she has been forced to remarry, then that particular remarriage, it should be allowed with the consent of her father. And suppose she has no father, then it should be uh, allowed with the consent of her paternal grandfather. And suppose she has no such grandfather, then it should be the her mother. And suppose if she doesn't have any of all of these, then it should be the next male relative that is present at that particular point of time. And according to this act, widows were to give up any such inheritance. This act was particularly targeted at child widows whose husbands had died before the consummation of marriage. So these were the social legislation acts that has been given to the women of our Indian society. All right, so for this lecture we will stop here only, and in next lecture we will study the government schemes and programs that has been present in our Indian society for to support the women empowerment in our Indian society. And also we will study some of the positive stories that have empowered the women community. All right, so if you have any doubt regarding any of the social legislation acts that has been studied in this lecture, you can comment down in the below section. Thank you. Thank you for listening to lecture.